Alexandre, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Very, very welcome. Hello, Jessica.
Hello. I know that there'll be lots of sounds of noises, and you're getting messages nonstop because we're still in the middle of Paris Fashion Week. But I wanted to jump off with a question about Paris Fashion Week and the fashion weeks in general in this time of digital. What's that been like for you, this Paris Fashion Week in particular, and globally, how's it been going?
Paris Fashion what?
Exactly.
Same initial. I mean, what it has been like, I mean, I have to say, given the pandemic still been here and given the situation, it's been quite interesting and very, very busy for us. Very different than before, obviously. I mean, we've been officially this season engaging in doing shows with no audience for the first time, because when we really think about it, a year ago when it started, we finished Fashion Week.
Yep.
And the following season was, the cruise was basically canceled. All the spring activities were canceled. There was a little opening in July last year when we insisted on doing some live and lively shows and events, and we had the chance to have designers we work with that agreed with us, and we did the Jacques in the Whitfield, and we did the Dior in Lecce in Puglia. And then in September, October, we had a small window again where we did a little bit of shows with a little bit of local audience. But this season, for the first time, and quite officially since before Christmas, we knew we were not going to have an audience, which makes everybody thinking very differently. And I mean, I'm going to answer probably a few of your questions all in one, but so as a result of that, basically, we all engaged I mean, we had engaged at De Betak with Bureau Future a long time ago into developing and augmenting the live content with digital better. But when you know you're entering a season that's only going to be viewed digitally, then you really engage differently. So this Fashion Week has been very interesting, very different, very demanding. I personally, so we at Bureau Betak started a few years ago with Bureau Future to spend energy and dedication to the augmentation of the life through digital. In other words, it's been a few years that I've always been saying and thinking that more and more the audience, of course, is virtual on the screen. We still have a small live audience, that's the professional audience, but that we have to dedicate way more energy and content to the virtual audience. Otherwise, there won't be any reasons anymore one day to do live shows. That truthfully, it's been years. We know that the live shows exist because they become great digital content.
Yes.
Now, having said that, we started Bureau Future. We started focusing on that. We didn't know it would come so fast that there would be a time when there would be only a digital audience. In order to continue to do well what we do, in some cases, in addition to designing and producing the show and producing the film, now I'm also actually directing many of the films we're doing and co-directing or still designing and producing for invited directors for some others that we do. And funny enough, it's very exciting. It's a very logic continuation to what I used to do, but nevertheless, it's very, very different. And one of the big differences is that when we worked on shows as we did before live, with a live stream and a live edit and a live shoot, both the show and the film were over the second the show is over. So you work for months and then for weeks and for days and nights and hours and minutes and seconds to a very short momentum that's somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. You start it pretty much on time. And once you start, you have this big rush of adrenaline. You direct the show, you direct the film, you shoot, and then you're done and you put down your ClearCom and you run to the next show. And while you run to the next show, in my case, I would I would relook at what we just did on the motor taxi or in the car on the way, and I would, or in a bicycle lately, and I would already think of what I would do for the next show of that, of that designer. And the next one, and then I get to the next one. The way things happened this season is that because there was no audience, there was no live, and because there was no live, we used the luxury. It's not a luxury, but we used the possibility we had this time to shoot sometimes only a few hours before, or a day before, even 2 or 3 days before, And
you are definitely popular.
and I can't, yeah, it doesn't stop, but it's the sound of the computer.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say? No, I was
But
saying
what,
that, yeah, what's very different this time is that basically, unlike before, you do your show, you finish your show, you
right.
run. This time we shoot a bit before or even a few days before, and
Mm-hmm.
then you shoot and reshoot and reshoot and reshoot and change your camera angles and reshoot and reshoot. And then you finish shooting, and instead of being, people clap, it's great, thank you, goodbye. Then you run to the edit room and you start looking at
Mm-hmm.
the rushes, and then you start editing.
Like
And
a
that
proper
goes on.
movie.
I mean, it is,
Exactly. It's a proper movie.
it's more of a proper movie, and even if it's just the filming of a show, but since we're educating our eyes and the audience's eyes and the professional audience's eyes, because we have to remember one thing: the editors, the traditional professional fashion show audience, used to never look at the videos of the shows. They were there. They couldn't care less.
Absolutely.
And then the ones who
Absolutely.
needed to look at the looks, they would go on the runway and look at the looks. No one looked at those films before. It's the first
Mhm.
year in life that people start really dedicating the proper needed attention to the films of the show.
Well, talk to me about that, because I mean, one of the things that I've been telling people, or that I've been, sharing with people, is that I think there are many things that there are takeaways from this last year, but one of them is the need for such excellent storytelling. I mean, like you said, a live show, runway, there we go, done and dusted right after the show. Whereas now, because everybody's so focused on the film itself, the movie, as it were, to represent and tell a story, has that really changed the way that you
Yeah,
function or the way you think about it?
there are a few different schools of thought and
Yeah.
of action. Um, some people, and I'm one of those, well, actually, I've done both, but for some designers, we've done traditional runway shows in a way, but they are filmed better, much better. But they're
Hmm.
still shows. It's a runway. It's a girl after another. She walks and whatever. For some of them, we started hybriding it a little bit, meaning we add a little bit of storytelling. And some others, like Maria Grazia for the couture, for
Hmm.
example, for the Tower Story, or even the other couture, did a full-on narrative film. So
Hmm.
you have the full-on narrative film, the fashion show only as it was before, and the hybrid where it's the fashion show, but we add a little bit of narration in it so that there's more context and there's more interest. The truth of the matter is, when we do live shows, even though we do them mostly for a very large digital audience, with a live audience, we manage to create an emotion that
Hmm.
when we do it well, somehow transmits better, even on a phone, and gets the digital audience interested.
Hmm.
When you do a live show, a fashion show just for camera with no live audience, there's a huge lack of adrenaline and energy that transmits even digitally. And
Hmm.
I presume the viewer gets bored much faster. I do.
Hmm.
And if you're gonna have to stay between 5 and 10 or even 15 or more minutes in front of your phone screen, looking at a girl or boy one after the other, you get bored quicker. I mean,
Hmm.
of course. So hence the narrative. The houses that can afford the energy, the time, and the money to add narrative and or to go completely narrative, um, probably get a more captive audience, and
Hmm.
things go in not just in trends, they go in how you educate your audience. So
Yeah.
now that the audiences of fashion shows, both the professional fashion audiences and the traditional large digital fan base audiences, have been accustomed in the past year to more and more and more
Yes, much
to
more
better fashion
sophisticated.
show content, to more narrative within it, to also more narrative films, and to all of sorts of different variations that everyone feels that they need to give more. And in a way, they're right, because it's not that more is always better, but it's just that the audiences are being used to a higher level of quality and a
Hmm.
more engaging kind of content. So
Well,
we
I mean,
need
what
to
do you
do it
think?
well.
I mean, I know that you and I are probably on the same page that I think it's important to have a live audience. I mean, even if it's something smaller, like what happened with Jacques Boost that you did during, well, it was still the pandemic, the social distancing version of it. But hopefully soon we'll all be able to, travel the world and come back to shows. What for you is the the sweet spot? Do you think that we need to go back to the old way of doing things with the fashion shows, with
No,
the everybody
I
traveling the
don't.
world?
I think that no, I don't think we need to go back to the old ways, and I really don't think we will. I mean, I think that's been a breaking point in our lives, and unfortunately, or fortunately, hopefully, and I'm very optimistic myself, it could be for the better. I do believe that first of all, I'm very happy and even flattered that after spending my entire life doing fashion shows for audiences that complained about going to them, a few months after not having them, they already started saying they were missing them.
I bet.
And I was quite happy to, I was quite happy to feel and hear that. On the other hand, I strongly believe that sadly, there won't be nor the economy, nor the will probably, nor the need after the pandemic for the entire world to go everywhere, every time. For sure, we know that this year, even if we're better with vaccination and we have audiences again starting next fall, we probably won't have any Americans and Asians in Europe, or very little Americans and no Asians, and vice versa.
Yeah.
I do believe it will never go back to being all of the body of press and buyers and influencers from everywhere in the world, always coming everywhere all the time. That I'm sure. I also believe that it will open the doors for what I've always wanted to do, which is a little less systemacy and a little bit more of creative freedom and strategic freedom. I believe that some houses, starting by the ones who can afford it physically, and for the ones who cannot, also digitally, will travel differently. I think that the shows are, of course, global and worldwide when they're seen worldwidely online, but nevertheless, they could also travel physically to different audiences. Not the same. It means that, a house that's always shown in Paris, New York, or London, or Milan, maybe one day will, which we started to do with a few.
So you're talking more of you're talking about not having a hub of a fashion week anymore, but having more of like a destination show
No,
somewhere.
I'm talking about having both. I think that we're going to go back to a hub of a fashion week. I think that the local fashion, the fashion weeks will be a little bit more local, at least by continent. I think there will be much less Americans and Asians and Middle East traveling to Europe, and much less Europeans traveling to America and Asia, of course. I think that we will resume doing fashion weeks, but there will be probably less of that traveling audience. That eventually the houses, at times, to activate physically their other audiences, should and will and would travel. Not with a repeat show, but maybe with the same show or another show, meaning shows are global. You don't need to repeat the same thing 3 times everywhere in the world because they've all seen it.
Yep.
But sometimes you can take your show somewhere else. We had started to experiment with that before because I thought it was a good idea to just re-raise the interest. I mean, we took Rodarte to Paris a few years ago. We took Proenza Scuola to Paris. We took Rodarte to LA. We took Gabriela Hearst to Paris last time. We took Helmut Lang from Paris to New York 20 years ago, and that
I remember.
is memorable. And I still believe that all of those, even though they were one-offs, unexpected changes, re-raised the attention to the brand and the designer. I think that especially the mega brands will have to consider how to more and more and better address their international audiences, and especially the Chinese ones, but the global Asian markets and Middle East and America right now, traveling. So there might be opportunities through the needs of entertaining those audiences. And for that reason, I also think that because people will travel less, because and also because the level of the digital way we're showing will have increased and not go back to being lesser after COVID. Between the better digital streaming, the better remote and virtual viewing, and the ability to at some point travel and show physically again, we will mix it all to a new format.
Well, talk to me about new formats, because I am all over, Oculus Quest right now. Oculus Quest is my jam. I'm on my VR all the time, doing Beat Sabers and other things. I mean, what for you? Because you've always been. I want to talk about the sustainability aspect about it because I know it's been just over a year now. You launched your 10 Commandments, but I do want to first talk about that when you're talking about what's the next step? Is it VR? You're talking about traveling, Lex. What's really exciting you technically and digitally right now?
I mean, oh, I'm sorry. I just need to. The I think that all of it. I mean, I think we're we're still in a time of experimentation, and hopefully the fashion world in general is very good at that, and will always be experimenting. So right now, all of the new technologies that are being used, when the first one that uses it, it's a one-off and it's an exception, and then slowly, as always with technology, it'll get into everybody else's life. I mean, obviously, I think VR is a great tool, and interaction is a great tool. I mean, Gucci did the first full, in a way, interactive experience with the video game that they released. When was it, in October, November?
Yeah, I think so. With Pokemon Go, you're talking about that.
Sorry?
You're talking about the partnership they did with
I mean,
Pokemon Go?
not Gucci. No, I'm sorry. I take it back. I mean Balenciaga. Gucci was the other one.
Balenciaga.
No, the Balenciaga,
Yes.
the Balenciaga game, which was great, and I think I looked at it well. I mean, I had nothing to do with it. I was very impressed, and in the same time, I heard everyone saying, but there was hardly no interactivity, and it was really lame as a game for people who know games and game a lot. Um, I mean, it's a topic we've studied like everyone, I guess.
Yeah.
A high level video game making takes years and millions and many millions that no brand could spare for one collection showing. People always forget the reality of things. So having done what they did in the time that they had, and the budgets, which, I mean, it's a big house, and they have, we're not gonna, is already quite impressive. When you start working on interaction and interactivity, you understand how much time it takes and how much money it costs. So, but also because we're still early in that game per se, it will become much more affordable soon, like everything in technology. So what I think is that right now we're all playing with everything. When you're not the first one at the minute it starts, you wait a little bit longer to do it again, because otherwise it looks like you're just following. So since you haven't, if you haven't been the first one on that, or on the VR headsets or whatever, then one needs to research a lot more to come up with the next available thing. I personally believe in all technology developments, and I think they're great to experiment with. I think it takes a while for all of it to become the norm, in the sense that you can really play with it. The truth is, technology is very fast, and in the same time not fast enough. I know we've been working with Instagram for a long time now, for years maybe, asking them for additional capabilities of interaction and of ways of posting, and they're really willing to do it, and they're working on us very well to get there, but it takes a while. It takes time.
Yeah, no, it takes a village. But
Yeah.
it takes a
Sorry.
village. But so talking about taking a village, you were right before the shit hit the fan. Let's be blunt. In February, you launched your 10 Commandments, and made your brand, sustainable in a way that no other company, I think, is really committed to, and in the field that you're doing. So I wanted to, now that it's been a year in, and God knows when you launched it, you had no idea a pandemic was about to hit the world. But can you talk to me about what this last year has been like for you, and have you been able to hold strong to those 10 Commandments?
Yes,
What have been the
yes.
easy ones? Tell me a little bit
No,
more
of
how it's
course we
been.
have. Well, I mean, first of all, unfortunately, of course, the past year has been much slower in terms of quantity. I mean, as I said, we manage, out of all people in the world, in our worlds of doing fashion shows, we had the luck to have designers and partners that followed us on doing a little bit, in the windows that we had. But again, it wasn't that many. We had
Yeah.
a few shows in July, a few shows in September, October, and physically that was it. Then we started doing shows in 2021, and those were always no audiences. But to go back to the sustainability, our 10 commandments that we published and announced as a rule going forward in a year ago, we continued, of course, to apply to everything we did. It was made more complicated because, as you've experienced, I'm sure, in your everyday life, and I know if you've been traveling, COVID, because of COVID, there's been a surge of disposable and plastic and single-use crap in our life because of sanitary measures, which of course I
Yep.
respect and understand and apply more than everyone else. But unfortunately, so we've had to fight even much more than before. We had to fight very hard for no single-use plastic in our productions, given the quantity of single-use plastic there was given to our life. And there is always a solution. It might be a little more costly, but nowadays, more and more, it's not even a matter of money. It's just a matter of work. It takes a lot of
Mm-hmm.
research and a lot of work to go find the proper resources to do things better. But they exist and they don't cost much more.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, I started flying again. I mean, since last summer already, and the amount of single-use plastic you get in a plane today with the excuse of COVID is unacceptable. Or
Mm-hmm.
even in luxury restaurants that bring you plastic this and that and the other, so that you don't have to wash something that's reusable.
Mm-hmm.
We've managed not to do that in our productions, and we're very proud of this. We've added a very important COVID sanitary measure department that's being put in place on every production we do. It's
Okay.
huge, it's massive. And in addition to the sustainability and the social, obviously now we have the sanitary measures. But we managed to mix them and to make sure that we kept on applying. Now the challenge more than the case per case is the money. I mean, basically, with COVID came less activity that engenders less budget, less
Yeah.
money, less viewers. And even though a lot of our clients and a lot of the great luxury groups and luxury brands have been doing really well during the pandemic.
That's actually true. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. But nevertheless, of course, I don't know if you hear all this.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, and of course, the budgets are a bit smaller.
Mm-hmm.
There's no longer an audience to accommodate.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the budgets we've moved them onto the digital and the filming instead of the
Mm-hmm.
physical and the showing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm not going to bore you with technical details, but that makes a lot of change in the way we approach everything, including the expenses that went
Mm-hmm.
into our sustainability program. So it's very challenging now to make sure. I mean, no one wants to go back to the way we did things less carefully before,
Mm-hmm.
but nevertheless, it's even harder to find in the budget to continue to our sustainability measures. And that's the biggest of challenges. And of course, we discuss it continuously with our clients, and they all say that we're with you, we want to continue, but
Mm-hmm.
but it's a bigger challenge because we have less means to do so.
Yeah. I mean, talk to me about that. I mean, because you have clients, I mean, you have this kind of privileged situation in that you can talk to different brands, you're talking to different artists, you're kind of, a center point within the world of fashion. And what are the general feelings and things that you're picking up that people are talking about, or the changes that you feel people are really going to be implementing besides maybe the digital aspect of filming? But do you think that there are going to be more specific changes in like less seasons, less shows, less production? Do you feel like there's
Yeah,
a paring down in general?
yes, in general, now as a general trend, everyone wants to do what they can in their fields, and they're big pyramids. I mean, in a fashion house, you have the design studio, then the fashion production, then the communication, then the marketing, then the digital, then the management. And so I think everyone in their departments wants to do or have someone there that wants to do something, which is great. So, I mean, people in design, in fashion houses think that effectively there should be less product or less collections. In marketing, there should be less events or less traveling or less whatever, etc. So, and I strongly believe in that. I think it's the beginning and it's going to go very fast. So it's a bit like technology. There will be a lot of experimentation, not just on what works from a carbon footprint reduction point of view, but also what works from a purely conceptual and social and philosophical point of view.
Mm-hmm.
All topics, once addressed, open it up in a way that will discuss them, understand the problem, and try to find a solution. So from reducing the size of the collection, the quantity of collections, even the genderlessness in collections,
Mm-hmm.
that's already a start, of course, of more eco-consciousness.
Absolutely.
The the reuse of resources, the reuse of fabrics, the sustainable fabrics, of course, or organic fabrics, the all of those things. And what really annoys me is that there's a lot of course, there's a lot of criticism coming from many places in the world. I read a lot of it today on the show that just posted against the world of fashions and luxury and how unconscious and ecological they are. You know what? You need to change from the inside. Every problem that we have, it's bullshit. The thing that the fashion industry and the luxury worlds have is that they have a great following that is a huge influence on mentality changing, and they have great means. It's an industry that has means. If we use the power of influence and the power of those means in a good direction, it will be one of the industries that can help go the fastest, probably into changing the way it needs. Nothing can happen overnight. And everyone seems to forget that. I mean, I'm the first one to advocate and I've been for a very long time, and I've been really, really aggressive about it in my field, which is the one of doing events and fashion shows,
Yeah.
and advocate the fact that we have to address things sustainably better, and that fashion needs to give the example. And because I do fashion shows, I'm the first one in line, because I'm the one that first probably I don't spend the most of the industry, but I'm the most visible spender of the industry in terms of carbon expenditure. When we put on a huge show with huge lights and huge this and lots of travel, by definition, we're showing off a huge ecological expenditure, which is not right. So we proved when we demonstrated, I mean, we demonstrated, when we shared our efforts and we shared the results a year ago, we proved that we already went down 20% on our carbon footprint on the way we do things, and we can continue to do a lot better. Now, COVID helping, there was a lot less guest traveling, and there will be for a long time a lot less guest traveling, and that will, by itself, actually lower the carbon footprint of those fashion weeks and fashion shows. And then by addressing the topic, by making it an open discussion 24/7 with our clients and between them and their clients and all of that, we are doing what you're doing, which is opening all topics to how can we do better everywhere. And just by addressing it, it starts happening. I hear it in design meetings. I hear it when I hear the designers I work with and their studios and the kids that are around in the studio. And everyone comes up with ideas and solutions. There's been many, and everyone is criticizing. So what I was saying at the beginning of my phrase, every time it's criticizing the fashion world are doing enough or what they're doing is bullshit. But you know what? You got to start somewhere. And I'm quite excited now, a year later, that I see that there is serious discussion of reuse of dead stock materials, a reuse of previous patterns so that there's less expenditure in producing, reuse, just the idea of reuse. I've said a year ago in my manifesto, the number 4, I think it was number 4 commandment, that I wanted to promote the reuse by reusing things you don't see, you know, the way we build our platforms and we keep them and rerun them, but also promoting it by reusing cultural elements, reusing props, furniture, historical designs, or even old clothing, vintage anything. Promoting that reusing and putting on stage is probably helping the new generations and the current ones think that the reuse is cool, that the vintage is cool, that, you know, that all new is not cool. And we are doing that, and we are doing it even with designers who are attacked for doing all new clothes because they let us, little by little,
step by step,
step by step, do that. And in the meantime, they're not going fast enough to my taste, maybe, but at least they're starting. And I think it's a great thing. And I think we have to be positive. And I think we have to, you cannot kill the world of fashion and luxury. First of all, because it feeds hundreds of millions of mouths in the world.
Yeah, it's $1 billion industry, and it supports millions and millions of people across the planet.
But especially down the chain.
Yeah.
And now with COVID, even more so, because sadly, COVID has stopped all tourism, all traveling, and many of the activities that were ultimately feeding the end of the chain, which is the third world countries and the poorest countries. Fashion was one of the last, industries that continued, in fact, feeding that chain. Maybe not the most sustainable manner yet, even though it was more sustainable because it became more digital and there was less traveling. But it did, and it does. So I am really pro I mean, I've worked all my life doing what I do. It's been a long time already within that life that I realized how bad, in a way, I do to the planet, and what I can do to change it. And I've been asked a million times, I've been told many times, it is probably hypocritical to say you want to change and remain in the most, uh, 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 um, in the least eco-conscious industry.
Right.
And my answer is been often the same, and I repeat it. But you know what? No, you can change things from the inside. So
I
if
agree.
I step out at my point in my life and I say, okay, I've made enough to survive the end of my life, and I can go dedicate myself to ecological or environmental issues, I will probably do much less than I can being on the inside and doing what I do and
No,
helping.
I absolutely see you. Yeah, making change from the interior. Well, let's
Yeah.
talk about, and I know you have to run, but I want to ask you one last question, and that is talking about change. And you said, of course, this last year things were pared back, less shows, people converting and trying to figure it out as they go. But I wanted to know about you personally. How did you keep yourself in balance and sane during this last year where things were so much in flux and nobody knew what was going on and where we were going to be? And then you had free time maybe that you never thought you would have. So just talk to me a little bit about how, for you personally, what this last year has been like,
I
what
mean,
changes you've experienced.
obviously we're in a pretty privileged world, so I'm not gonna complain about that. The uncertainty was very hard to live with at the beginning. On the other hand, I have the chance to have a 3-year-old baby, so I spent a lot more time with her than I probably would have had if there hadn't been for COVID. Like all of us, we spent a lot more time with our, I guess, with our close surroundings and families and homes. Um, and I managed to do a lot of things that I never really was doing before. Read a lot again and think a lot of again and research just that, and that was fantastic. I mean, at the end, well, I'm in Paris right now, and I had the chance to be in Paris when confinement started, and we stayed here. And at the end of the day, the very strong confinement was only 2 months, and then they opened up again, and then they closed up again. I mean, what we've all lived. But those I think those times were good times of reflection and creation, aside from what I just said, and instead of enjoying a little bit the freedom, I think of them as I didn't go nuts at all. On the contrary, I mean, in a way, I think it was quite active in that way. I think, I mean, I'm overdosed of Zooms like we all are, but I'm also grateful to the fact that it became a little bit too much, but at least it became a normality in everyone's life. Again, one of my first commandments that I announced a year ago was
It's
I
so
would
true.
like to no longer travel for pre-production meetings that could be avoided and do them digitally. Because a lot of people of older generations maybe were not accustomed to that. And because they could afford it, they wanted you to be there. And in the past many, many years of my life, how many times have I gone to America or Asia for a day, for a meeting? And
That's
it's
crazy.
insane. It's completely crazy. I still will go, and I still enjoy going, and I'm very privileged to be able to go when I do things of importance. When I go put on a show together, and I have to be there to direct all of the talents and the hundreds of people who work on it. That's my job, and I go do my job with pleasure. But when it's about explaining an idea or just meeting with someone for a couple hours, that's something that I've for years now refused to want to do and say we need to do it. We can do it digitally. We have the means to do so. Well, now that we've had COVID and we spent a year of Zoom, we all know we can. And in fact, we all
Absolutely.
know we can do that and a lot more, which is great. Sometimes the physical presence is not necessary. I think we did full on physical all of our lives until COVID. Then we did full on digital and digital only during COVID. Hopefully, once we come out of COVID, we will have all learned how to balance it intelligently. I don't believe in neither nor, in 100% one or the other. I really strongly believe that to live our life intelligently and interestingly, we need to have some physical emotion in it uh,
Yes.
and touch all the senses again. And that I miss, and I'm very happy to do it again when I can. However, I also think that using intelligently the resources and technology to address time differently and to address our lives and our necessities is great. I'll be very happy to do a bit of Zoom again when they avoid me taking a plane for a day to America or Asia or even Europe sometimes. And I'll be very happy to be able to help transmit a live emotion to a live audience again as well. And I think
so we're talking about work-life balance is a balance between real life and digital, it sounds like.
yeah, but life as well. I think both of them. I think the balance, and I mean, again, I don't know that balance is a word, because I don't believe in I think we need, I don't believe in systemacy. And I think too much equilibrium could get you into a boring systemacy. And I think
Interesting.
systemacy is boring. I think we need excitement in our lives. And excitement also comes from contrast, from new experiences, from unexpected events, and from life. What I do believe is that in order to not be systematic, we need to use both. And we don't even need to calculate how much of which, but we need to use the digital accesses we have that allow us to no longer need to be in an office or in a city or in a meeting or in God knows what, and also use the ability we have when well chosen to, and even more than ever in a way, to travel intelligently and eco-responsibly and continue to share knowledges and cultures and experiences.
Well, when you're talking about sharing experiences and having great moments of emotion, I want to thank you as we wrap up for all of the amazing emotions that you've created in my life, for all of the shows that you've done that I've been able to see in real life and be there and experience them with you. They've been some of the highlights of my life. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much. That's always very happy to hear.
All right, big kiss. Mwah.
Yes, Jessica. Thanks a lot. Lovely speaking to you.
Bye.
Bye.
You too, as always.
Bye bye.